Ambassador Rodriguez struggled to keep her face neutral as she stared at the holographic projection of High Counselor Zixtal, whose crystalline form sparkled with what she had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. Simply agree to the reasonable restrictions on your species' advancement into quantum technologies, the crystalline being chimed, its facets reflecting rainbow patterns across the negotiation chamber. We merely ask that you limit yourselves to approved research paths and submit all findings for review before implementation. Rodriguez exchanged glances with her colleague Ambassador Patel, who was doing an admirable job of not laughing out loud. They'd both been through enough of these sessions to know exactly where this was going. So let me get this straight, Rodriguez said, leaning forward in her chair. You want humanity. The species that went from horse-drawn carriages to landing on our moon in less than 70 years, to voluntarily restrict our scientific progress because it makes you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is an understatement. A new voice joined the conversation as Ambassador Kirk of the Hive Mind Collective buzzed into view, their insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. Your species' rate of technological advancement is unprecedented and destabilizing to the carefully maintained balance of the Galactic Council. Yes, exactly. Zixtal chimed in agreement, crystal facets pulsing with relief that someone else was backing them up. The traditional path for species advancement takes at least 3 standard millennia from achieving spaceflight to developing quantum communications. You humans have done it in less than 2 centuries. Patel cleared his throat. Actually, it's been closer to 1 century since our first powered flight, but who's counting? He smiled innocently, as several alien delegates visibly recoiled. That's exactly the problem. Ambassador Glixel of the Silicon Consciousness contributed, their holographic avatar flickering with distress. Your species seems pathologically incapable of proceeding at a reasonable pace. Did you know that the average council species takes at least 500 years just to fully optimize their initial FTL drive designs? Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. We improved on the basic Alcubierre drive you shared with us within 3 months of receiving the specifications. Was that not normal? The chamber erupted into a cacophony of alarmed chirps, chimes, and various other alien vocalizations. Rodriguez used the moment of chaos to send a quick text message to Patel's secure tablet. Should we tell them about the quantum tunnel network? Patel's reply came swiftly. Let's not give anyone a heart attack, or whatever passes for a heart in their species. High Counselor Zixtal finally managed to restore order, their crystalline form vibrating at what humans had learned was their species' equivalent of an authoritative tone. This is precisely why we must insist on these reasonable restrictions. The stability of the galaxy depends on predictable technological progression. We cannot have a junior species charging ahead without proper oversight. Rodriguez sat back in her chair, her expression growing serious. And if we refuse? Then we would have no choice but to impose sanctions. Kirk buzzed ominously. Trade restrictions, technology embargoes, possibly even quarantine protocols. A moment of silence fell over the chamber as the human ambassadors appeared to consider this. Then, to everyone's surprise, they both smiled. Well then, Patel said cheerfully, standing up and straightening his jacket. I believe we have our answer. Indeed we do, Rodriguez agreed, also rising. High Counselor, distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council, we thank you for your time and your interesting proposal. However, we must respectfully decline. You decline? Zixtal's crystal structure seemed to lose some of its luster. But the sanctions. Oh yes, about those. Patel continued, still smiling. You might want to check your latest intelligence reports about Earth's quantum tunnel network. The one we weren't supposed to be capable of building for another 1,000 years or so. The chamber erupted again, this time in pure panic. Through the chaos, Rodriguez's voice cut clearly. We already have functioning nodes on every human colony world and major installation. Your sanctions would be, shall we say, largely symbolic at this point. Impossible! Glixel's avatar flickered violently. The energy requirements alone would be... Oh, right, Patel interrupted, snapping his fingers as if just remembering something. We solved the energy crisis too. Turns out you can get quite a lot done when your species isn't taking 5-century coffee breaks between innovations. This is unprecedented, Kirk buzzed, their mandibles clicking in agitation. The Council protocols clearly state. Here's the thing about humans and protocols, Rodriguez said, gathering her materials. We tend to view them more as guidelines, especially when they're designed to hold us back for no good reason. But, the carefully maintained balance. Zixtal's voice had risen to a crystalline shriek. Maybe it's time for a little creative disruption, Patel suggested. Change can be good for bureaucracies. Keeps everyone on their toes. Or appendages. Or whatever you all use for locomotion. Rodriguez pressed a small device on her wrist, and a shimming portal appeared behind the human delegates. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a quantum tunnel network to expand. Feel free to keep discussing those sanctions, though. We'll be sure to read about them on our FTL social media network. The one that isn't supposed to exist for another 2,000 years, Patel added helpfully. As the human ambassadors stepped through the portal, leaving the council chamber in complete chaos, Rodriguez couldn't resist one final comment. Oh, and we're hosting an open house at our Mars colony next month. You're all welcome to attend, assuming you can figure out how we terraformed it so quickly. The portal closed with a soft pop, leaving behind a room full of stunned alien diplomats and the distinct impression that the galaxy's carefully maintained order had just been thoroughly upended by a species that treated million-year technological roadmaps as weekend project suggestions. Back in the secure conference room at United Earth Diplomatic Headquarters, Rodriguez and Patel finally allowed themselves to laugh properly. Did you see Zixtal's faces? All of them? Rodriguez wiped tears from her eyes. I thought they were going to shatter when you mentioned the quantum tunnel network. The silicon consciousness is probably still rebooting. Patel chuckled. But my favorite was Kirk trying to quote protocols at us, as if we haven't already found 17 loopholes in every single one of them. A gentle chime interrupted their mirth as a holographic display activated, showing Admiral Hassan's amused face. I take it the negotiations went as expected? Better, Rodriguez replied, still grinning. They threatened us with sanctions if we didn't agree to slow down our technological development. We decided to inform them about a few of our recent achievements instead. Ah, Hassan nodded sagely. Nodded. And how did they take the news about the quantum tunnel network? About as well as you'd expect, Patel said, though we didn't mention the AI cooperation treaties or the dimensional physics breakthroughs. Thought it might be a bit much for one day. Probably wise, Hassan agreed. Speaking of which, our friends in the research division have something they'd like to show you both. Apparently, they've made some progress on that little problem of causality in quantum communications. Rodriguez and Patel exchanged looks. Didn't they just start working on that last week? Rodriguez asked. Tuesday, I believe, Hassan confirmed. They're quite excited about it. Something about accidentally solving time while they were at it. Of course they did, Patel sighed, though he was smiling. Should we tell the council about this one? Let's give them a few days to recover from today's revelations, Rodriguez suggested. Besides, I want to see if they figure out how we're getting around their monitoring systems first. You mean the ones we've been using as additional processing power for our quantum computations? Hassan asked innocently. All three of them laughed at that. It was almost unfair, really. The Galactic Council had spent millennia carefully managing the pace of technological advancement, ensuring that no species developed too quickly or upset the delicate balance of power they'd established. Then humanity had come along and treated their carefully crafted technological roadmap as a checklist to be completed as quickly as possible. You know, Patel mused, I almost feel bad for them. Their entire system is based on the assumption that species will follow the traditional development path. They have no protocols for dealing with a civilization that simply decides to speedrun technological advancement. They'll adapt, Rodriguez said confidently. They'll have to, because we're certainly not slowing down. Speaking of not slowing down, Hassan interjected. You might want to head down to the research division soon. Dr. Patel, your sister, not you, Ambassador, is practically bouncing off the walls about this causality breakthrough. Something about it having implications for their work on pocket universes. Pocket universes? Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Wasn't that supposed to be at least 5,000 years beyond our current technological level? According to the Council's roadmap, yes, Hassan confirmed. But you know how our scientists get when someone tells them something's impossible. They take it as a personal challenge. Patel nodded. Well, shall we go see how many laws of physics my sister has broken this week? Just let me send one more message to our council friends, Rodriguez said, pulling out her tablet. I think they should know we're looking forward to next month's session, and that we'll be bringing some interesting data to share. You're evil, Patel told her admiringly. I prefer to think of it as maintaining diplomatic relations through regular updates on our progress, she replied primly. It's not our fault if those updates happen to cause widespread panic among the council species. Right, Hassan chuckled. Just like it's not our fault that humans tend to treat their careful restrictions as personal challenges to be overcome as quickly as possible. Exactly, Rodriguez agreed, sending her message. Now, let's go see what impossible thing we've achieved this week. I have another council session next month, and I'd love to have some new developments to casually mention. As they headed toward the research division, Rodriguez's tablet pinged with an incoming message. It was from High Counselor Zixtal, consisting of a single line. Please tell me you're joking about the Mars terraforming. She showed it to Patel, who grinned. Should we tell them about the Venus project? Let's save something for next time, Rodriguez decided. After all, what's the fun in revealing all your impossible achievements at once? Somewhere in the Galactic Council's central chamber, a crystalline being was probably having what passed for a nervous breakdown, while various other alien species tried to figure out how their carefully managed galaxy had been so thoroughly disrupted by a bunch of primates who treated technological limitations as suggestions and millennium-long development schedules as weekend projects. But that was their problem. Humanity had worlds to explore, physics to break, and a whole universe of impossible things to achieve before lunch, and they wouldn't have it any other way. The aftermath. They've called an emergency session, Admiral Hassan announced, his hologram materializing in the middle of the research lab where Rodriguez and Patel were watching Dr. Patel's team casually rewrite the laws of causality. Apparently, 17 different species have filed formal protests about our reckless advancement of technology. Rodriguez looked up from a fascinating display of quantum probability cascades. Only 17. I would have expected more after our little revelation about the tunnel network. Oh, the others are too busy trying to reverse engineer our methods, Hassan said with a grin. We've detected at least 30 different attempts to scan our facilities in the past hour alone. Did any of them notice that we're using their scanning attempts to gather data about their own technological capabilities? Dr. Patel asked without looking up from her work. The brilliant physicist shared her brother's sense of humor, but with an added dash of scientific mischief that made her particularly dangerous in a laboratory setting. Not yet, Hassan replied, though the silicon consciousness came close before they got distracted by trying to figure out how we're achieving quantum coherence at macro scales. Should we tell them we solved that one by accident while trying to make better coffee machines? Ambassador Patel asked innocently. His sister snorted. Still can't believe that worked. Though I maintain that discovering stable quantum fields in the pursuit of the perfect espresso is perfectly legitimate research. Speaking of legitimate research, Rodriguez interjected. How's the causality project coming along? Oh, that? Dr. Patel waved dismissively at a complex holographic model floating above her workstation. We solved it about 20 minutes ago. Turns out time is more of a suggestion than a rigid framework. We're now looking into some interesting implications for parallel universe theory. Which wasn't supposed to be on the agenda for another few centuries, her brother noted. Well, we got bored waiting for the quantum simulations to compile. One of the junior researchers chimed in. Did you know that if you fold space-time just right, you can use it as additional computing space? We figured that out during coffee break. Admiral Hassan's hologram pinched the bridge of his nose. Do I want to know how many fundamental laws of physics you've broken today? Broken implies they were correct to begin with, Dr. Patel replied cheerfully. We prefer to think of it as creative reinterpretation of existing frameworks. Before anyone could respond to that concerning statement, Rodriguez's tablet chimed with an urgent message. Her eyebrows shot up as she read it. Well, this is interesting, she said. The Arcturian technocracy is requesting an immediate private conference. Apparently they've been running their own accelerated research program in secret and want to compare notes. The crystalline beings who were so worried about proper technological progression? Patel asked, surprised. Turns out they've been using their natural crystal structure to run quantum computations this whole time, Rodriguez replied, scanning the message. They've been hiding their actual technological level from the Council for millennia. They want to know how we managed to advance so quickly without setting off the Council's progress monitoring systems. Should we tell them about the dummy research programs we've been running to keep the Council distracted? Hassan asked. You mean the ones where we pretend to struggle with basic anti-gravity while actually using it to build zero-point energy reactors? Dr. Patel grinned. I still say that was one of our better ideas. Along with the fake research papers we keep accidentally letting them discover, her brother added. I particularly enjoyed the one about our supposedly failed attempts at faster-than-light communication, which we wrote using our actual FTL communication network, Rodriguez remembered with a smile. The irony was rather perfect. A new alert flashed across the laboratory's main display screen. Dr. Patel glanced at it and burst out laughing. "What now?" Hassan asked, sounding almost afraid of the answer. "Remember how we were using their monitoring systems for additional processing power?" She managed between giggles. "Well, it seems we accidentally optimized their entire network while we were at it. Their surveillance capabilities just jumped forward about 3,000 years. "Oops," offered one of the junior researchers, not sounding particularly sorry. "So now the Council has access to technology they're not supposed to have for several millennia," Patel summarized. "That should make for some interesting political discussions. Especially since half of them are probably already using it to spy on the other half," Rodriguez noted. "Want to bet how long it takes them to realize we did it on purpose?" "You mean how long until they realize we're deliberately accelerating their technological development by making them try to stop us from accelerating our technological development?" Hassan asked. "That's rather devious, Ambassador." "I prefer to think of it as efficient," she replied. "They spend so much energy trying to figure out how we're advancing so quickly that they end up advancing quickly themselves. It's a win-win situation." "Speaking of winning," Dr. Patel said, "we've just confirmed stable contact with Parallel Universe number 47. They say hello, by the way, and want to know if we'd be interested in some cross-dimensional trade agreements." A moment of silence fell over the laboratory. "Just to be clear," Patel said slowly, "you've not only proven the existence of parallel universes, but established diplomatic contact with them. In the time we've been having this conversation?" "Don't be ridiculous," his sister replied. "We proved parallel universes last week. This was just the first test of the commercial transportation network." "The one that's not supposed to be possible for another 10,000 years?" Hassan asked wearily. "That's the one?" Dr. Patel confirmed cheerfully. "Though to be fair, we did have to invent 3 new branches of mathematics to make it work. Would you like to see the equations? They're quite elegant, especially in 11-dimensional space." Rodriguez's tablet chimed again. "The Council is demanding we attend an emergency session to explain our inexplicable rate of advancement," she reported. "They're particularly concerned about some unusual energy readings they've detected near our research facilities." "Ah," Dr. Patel said. "They probably noticed the dimensional breach. Don't worry, it's perfectly stable. Mostly stable. Well, it hasn't destroyed any universes yet." "Yet?" her brother asked. "Figure of speech," she assured him. "Though you might want to avoid mentioning the whole parallel universe thing at the Council session. I'm not sure their worldview could handle another shock right now." "Too late," Hassan reported, checking his own updates. "The dimensional energy signatures are pretty distinctive. The Silicon consciousness has already figured it out and is having what appears to be an existential crisis." "Only one existential crisis?" Rodriguez asked. "They're getting better at handling our revelations." "Oh no, wait," Hassan corrected himself. "They're having several existential crises simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Apparently they tried to use their newly upgraded monitoring systems to scan the dimensional breach." "And accidentally made contact with their parallel selves?" Dr. Patel guessed. "Yes, that would do it. Though they might be interested to know that they're handling it better than their counterparts in universe number 47. "I'm not even going to ask," Hassan decided. "Rodriguez, Patel, you should probably head to that council session before they completely lose what remains of their composure." "Too late for that too," Rodriguez said, checking one final message. "The HiveMind Collective just announced they're abandoning their traditional development protocols and starting an accelerated research program of their own. They say, and I quote, 'If the humans can break physics, so can we.'" "Mission accomplished?" Patel suggested. "Indeed," his sister agreed, "though I do have one small confession to make." "Do I want to know?" Hassan asked. "That breakthrough in causality we had earlier? Turns out we didn't just solve time as a concept. We may have accidentally created a few temporal loops. Nothing serious," she added quickly, seeing their expressions. "Just don't be surprised if you start remembering things that haven't happened yet." "Like the outcome of the council session we're about to attend?" Rodriguez asked, raising an eyebrow. "Possibly," Dr. Patel admitted, "though I should warn you, the temporal mathematics suggest multiple potential outcomes. In at least one of them, the entire council decides to abandon all pretense of technological restraint and starts a galaxy-wide scientific renaissance." "And in the others?" her brother inquired. "Oh, you know," she waved vaguely. "Panic, chaos, widespread technological revolution, the occasional dimensional anomaly. But the Renaissance timeline has a 51% probability, so I'm optimistic." Rodriguez and Patel exchanged looks. "Well," Rodriguez said finally, Shall we go help trigger a galaxy-wide paradigm shift? Just another Tuesday at the office, Patel agreed. Though perhaps we should wait until next session to mention the time loops. Probably wise, Hassan nodded. One fundamental restructuring of reality at a time. As the ambassadors prepared to return to the council chamber, Dr. Patel called after them. Oh, and if anyone asks, the temporary second moon around Mars is completely intentional and definitely not a side effect of the dimensional experiments. Not helping, sis, Patel called back. Neither is the fact that I can already remember how this session ends, she replied cheerfully. Have fun explaining the causality violations. Rodriguez just shook her head as they headed for the quantum tunnel terminal. You know, she mused. Sometimes I think we enjoy causing chaos in the galactic community a bit too much. Nonsense, Patel replied. We're simply helping them achieve their full potential by thoroughly destroying their carefully maintained illusion of control over technological progression. Through carefully calculated acts of scientific mayhem? Exactly. After all, what's the point of breaking the laws of physics if you can't have fun doing it? Somewhere in the multiverse, 17 different versions of the Galactic Council were about to discover just how much fun humans could have with physics. And in at least 51% of those universes, they were going to thank them for it. Eventually, the revolution. The Galactic Council's emergency session was everything Rodriguez had hoped for, and more. The massive chamber, usually a model of ordered diplomatic discourse, had devolved into what could only be described as organized chaos. If one was being extremely generous about the organized part. Order! High Counselor Zixtal's crystalline form was vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter lesser crystalline beings. We must maintain order. Oh, like you maintained order while secretly running quantum computations through your crystal matrix? Ambassador Kirk buzzed accusingly. The Hive Mind Collective has analyzed the data from the upgraded monitoring systems. We know what you've been doing. Says the species that's been using their hive mind as a biological quantum computer? The Silicon Consciousness representative shot back. Our new scans show your neural network has processing capabilities far beyond your reported technological level. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, watching the accusations fly back and forth. Is it wrong that I'm enjoying this? She whispered to Patel. If it is, I don't want to be right, he replied, not even trying to hide his grin. Though I am curious about one thing. How did they all start discovering each other's secret programs so quickly after the monitoring systems were upgraded? About that, Rodriguez said innocently. Remember how we were using their systems for additional processing power? Well, I may have had our AI slip in a few subroutines designed to highlight any anomalous energy signatures that might indicate hidden technological advancement. You deliberately engineered this chaos? I prefer to think of it as catalyzing inevitable revelations, she replied primly. Besides, look how productive they're being. They've already formed 3 different research coalitions in the midst of accusing each other of technological espionage. She was right. Even as various species continued to argue about who had been hiding what, delegates were hurriedly forming alliances and exchanging data. The Arcturian technocracy had already entered into a quantum computing partnership with the Silicon Consciousness, while the Hive Mind Collective was deep in negotiations with several organic species about biological computing applications. Humans! Zixtal's voice cut through the chaos. This is your doing, isn't it? I assure you, High Counselor, Rodriguez said smoothly. We had nothing to do with your various species' decisions to conduct secret research programs in violation of Council protocols. But you knew about them! We suspected, Patel corrected. Just like we suspected that the Council's rigid technological progression schedule was more about maintaining political control than preventing genuine disasters. The schedule exists for a reason, Zixtal insisted, though their crystalline resonance suggested they didn't entirely believe their own words anymore. Does it? Rodriguez asked quietly. Because from where we're sitting, it looks like every species here has been secretly pushing the boundaries of their capabilities while pretending to follow the rules. We just decided to skip the pretense. A thoughtful silence fell over the chamber as the implications of this sank in. The humans have a point, the Silicon Consciousness representative said finally. We've all been advancing in secret, each thinking we were the only ones brave enough or clever enough to bypass the protocols. And now that we know we're not alone, Kirk's antennae waved thoughtfully. Now you know that artificial limitations on scientific progress only serve to breed suspicion and waste resources on maintaining appearances, Patel finished. Imagine what you could achieve if you put that energy into actual research instead. Like achieving stable contact with parallel universes? A new voice asked. All heads turned to see a shimming portal appear in the center of the chamber. Through it stepped another Rodriguez and Patel. "Hello, everyone," the alternate Rodriguez said cheerfully. "Universe number 47 sends its regards. We thought you might be interested in comparing notes about how this particular meeting went in our timeline." The chamber erupted into chaos again, but this time with an undercurrent of excitement rather than accusation. Within minutes, delegates were crowding around the portal, eagerly questioning their counterparts from the parallel universe. "Did you plan this too?" Patel asked the Rodriguez from his universe. "Actually, no," she admitted, though I did wonder why Dr. Patel was smirking when we left the lab. "Speaking of my sister," Patel said, checking his tablet, "you might want to see this message she just sent." Rodriguez looked at the screen and raised an eyebrow. "Quantum entanglement successfully established between council chambers in 37 parallel universes. Interdimensional scientific conference beginning in 5 minutes. You're welcome." "She's getting better at causing diplomatic incidents," Patel noted proudly. "Diplomatic opportunities," Rodriguez corrected, watching as more portals began appearing around the chamber, each revealing another version of the council in various stages of technological revolution. After all, what's better than one galaxy's worth of species finally embracing unrestricted scientific advancement? 37 galaxies worth? Exactly. Though we should probably warn them about the time loops before they start comparing notes about future events. "Too late," Patel said, pointing to where several versions of High Counselor Zixtal were already engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion about events that hadn't happened yet in most timelines. Rodriguez's tablet chimed with another message from Dr. Patel. "By the way, the quantum entanglement may have accidentally created a localized area of accelerated time around the council chamber. Don't be surprised if you experience several weeks' worth of diplomatic negotiations in the next few hours." "Your sister," Rodriguez told Patel, "is either a genius or a madwoman. The two aren't mutually exclusive," he pointed out, "especially when it comes to humans." Around them, the council chamber had transformed into something that looked less like a diplomatic venue and more like the galaxy's most ambitious scientific conference. Delegates from multiple universes were sharing data, forming research partnerships, and generally ignoring every protocol about technological progression that had defined galactic civilization for millennia. "Mission accomplished?" Patel suggested. "Almost," Rodriguez replied, watching as a group of Silicon Consciousness representatives began explaining their latest quantum computing breakthroughs to an eager audience from multiple dimensions. "We still haven't told them about the pocket universes we've been using for data storage. One reality-breaking revelation at a time," Patel advised. "Though at this rate, they'll probably figure it out themselves before dinner." "Before dinner in which timeline?" "Good point. Time is getting a bit flexible in here." Indeed, different parts of the chamber seemed to be experiencing time at different rates, with some conversations lasting hours in what felt like minutes, while others seemed to move in slow motion. The effect was dizzying, but somehow appropriate for a meeting that was rapidly rewriting the rules of galactic civilization across multiple dimensions. Rodriguez's tablet chimed one final time. The message was from Admiral Hassan. "The Quantum Tunnel Network has officially connected with all 37 parallel council chambers. Also, Dr. Patel says to warn everyone that she may have accidentally created a few stable time loops while setting it up. On the bright side, we now have the most efficient interstellar, interdimensional mass transit system in any known universe. On the less bright side, Tuesday might happen a few extra times this week." "You know," Patel mused, watching as yet another portal opened to reveal what appeared to be a version of the council chamber from several centuries in the future. "When we decided to shake up the galactic status quo, I didn't expect it to involve quite so much literal shaking of the space-time continuum." "Really?" Rodriguez asked. "Have you met humans? We never do anything halfway, especially not scientific revolutions." Around them, the greatest minds from 37 different versions of the galaxy were thoroughly dismantling every assumption about technological progress that had held them back for millennia. And in at least 51% of those universes, they were going to thank humanity for it. Eventually, probably. Once they figured out how to stabilize the time loops, to be continued simultaneously across multiple dimensions.